Well, hello, everyone, and it's great today to be joined on the Reliability 4.0 podcast by Chris Phillips of Southwire. We are really excited to have you here, so thanks for joining us, Chris.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So just a little bit to get started, I'm sure the audience would love to know a little bit more about Southwire as a company, and then specifically Chris Phillips and your role at Southwire. So why don't you go ahead and share those couple things with us?
Sure. So Southwire Company is one of the largest wire and cable manufacturers in North America. Somewhere to the tune of about 9,000 employees or team we call them nowadays, spread out across our organization. And honestly, started out really core markets of wire and cable. So, most of the homes that are built have some Southwire wire and that kind of stuff, all the way up to circuit size THHN to high voltage underground transmission cables. We manufacture just about any type of wiring cable that you can think of. And over the last years have really diversified the business into kind of expanding into adjacent markets from that core, and really getting involved. What we have now, we call our engineered products and engineered solutions business. We have a services division. So it's
Yeah.
To put it simply, it's a pretty diversified and large scale company and still privately owned. So it's pretty interesting to work for a company that size and if we are privately owned and operating instead of publicly. And
That's
then
great.
As far as myself, I've worked for Southwire for the last 15 years, several different roles across the organization. This role, as director of facilities. That's a quick recap of my history.
That's great.
So, and in the current role, I oversee a team of about 100 skilled trades people who maintain facilities, across what we call our Carrollton campus. We have multiple manufacturing, plants in the Carrollton area. This team's kind of a centralized facilities group. Primarily focused on those what I call facilities infrastructure.
Okay.
The power grid for those site locations, compressed air systems, processed water systems, those types.
Okay. Well, I want to learn a little bit more about that, but before I dive into that, how did you come to join Southwire? You said you've been there quite a few years. How did you first start?
So, interestingly enough, I was actually a lineman and was laid off, and Southwire with what we call our general services facilities team that I oversee today, and really work with our electrical grid on our power grid side of things and maintaining that. From there, Southwire is a company that's really good about providing training to their team members. So we're continuing education. So took an interest in the reliability and maintenance side of things and went back to school. Furthered that knowledge there, and Southwire's continually providing opportunities to progress. So
that is fantastic to hear. Well, as a business that provides training to companies, we love to hear. Our company loves to hear when companies are making investments in their people, and you're really exactly the type of success story every company wants to see, right? Somebody who's invested in training and is upskilled and has then remained with the company for many, many years. So that's exciting to hear about. So you mentioned earlier you've got a team of 100 people on the sort of facilities and maintenance team. What do you see are kind of the biggest challenges facing you in your role, or what project might be kind of a challenge that you're working on right now?
So one in particular, out of that 100 folks, is kind of split into two different groups of people. I have a machine services side and then kind of our facility services side. But on that facility services side, historically, it was utilized largely project-based. So they supported a lot of projects in our manufacturing plants. Today, the long-term vision for that group is this kind of a centralized facilities maintenance group that really relieves
Okay.
our individual plant maintenance teams from having to worry about that facilities piece. They can focus on really improving, the maintenance environment for our production assets, right? So with that, a big challenge has been kind of, it's change at the end of the day. You start to try to change that reactive nature of somebody calls and I need a project, we're going to run up here and do it today, to we're becoming an organization who is very reliant and really fully utilizing our CMMS system, which we have adopted SAP PM. So to really rely on that system and move to a more proactive, planned, and scheduled maintenance team, it's been a challenge. Not that folks don't want to, but not everybody understands, the reason for that change. So a big part for me in dealing with that is kind of back to what Southwire's done for me in the past, and that's making sure that we train our team and provide them the opportunities. I'm a big proponent of MRE, and I went through that. It was a great training opportunity for me. I learned a lot about, maintenance and reliability through that. They also have, MRT training, which gets down to the technician level and helps them understand how does that fit with where we're going and really getting that thought process aligned. That's a big part of, how we're trying to combat some of that is, again, upskilling the training of our team so that they can see that vision and understand how they impact it and what part they play in helping us get there.
That's great. So just to be really clear, one of the biggest challenges you're facing is upskilling your people, and specifically, and I want to dig into this a little bit, this Reliability 4.0 podcast really focuses on that intersection of technology and new skills that people need to have in order to utilize that technology. So that's one of the biggest challenges. And one of the things you mentioned is that you shifted over to, I want to make sure I was clear. You said as your CMMS, it's SAP. Which version of that?
SAP PM.
Okay.
And so that's the plant maintenance module for SAP.
Yeah. And I don't know, were you involved in making that decision? Maybe you could just share with the audience how you went about selecting that, what aspects of it were the most attractive, not naming who you didn't pick, but just from a very high level, why was this a good fit for your organization?
In all honesty, so that decision was made prior to my time being at a point of having to put into that. But and I don't know all the reasons we decided it, but one thing is that SAP was already our operating platform for operations. So I think to some degree it made sense, to utilize that PM bolt-on module to really try to have our company all operating from a single platform, right?
That's great.
I will say that SAP PM is not necessarily the most user-friendly on the front end, but it's really good at capturing data. It really is a good system once you learn it. It's just
right.
It's getting people accustomed to using that system.
Yeah, I think obviously, again, our company builds software. We try to make it as user-friendly as possible. That's everybody's dream. Everybody thinks their software is user-friendly, but it's kind of in the eye of the beholder. But yeah, having a system that everybody is using, I think, is key. And, whether it's the easiest or most difficult, at the end of the day, if everyone's committed to it and invests in it, then you get to see results from it. Obviously, always want to pick one that's the most user-friendly, but also helps in that. But just as an aside, I just heard a news story that SAP is shifting a dramatic percentage of their workforce to invest in AI tools. So, your tool over time might have more and more AI built into it. So as you think about, again, using that CMMS and wanting to remain innovative and in your mind, staying proactive, how do you do that without compromising reliability? How do you, that balance between immediate fix versus the best fix? How do you try to manage that with your team?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. I bet a lot of folks have that same struggle. One thing, again, I'll go back to that training piece. And then another piece of that, is having the right mix when we're building teams to deal with issues, I think it's important. Most of our maintenance technicians are multi-skill. So in
Okay.
that, making sure that we have those diverse teams. Again, all of us have different strengths and weaknesses. So I think it's important that we have those diverse teams so that when we deploy out there, everybody sees it and problem solves from a different perspective. And I think having a team that's willing to work together and everybody understanding that their ideas are valid, I think that helps you capitalize on it. And that's another thing that we do talk about quite regularly. Actually, I think we'll talk about that in some of our standard interview questions. But part of that is understanding when, an immediate is the better, or when do we need to, go further down that road. And obviously we want to do the best long-term fix, right? But there are times when
Right.
it's a time and place for the quickest fix to maybe get this asset back up and running. Schedule the time to go back and make that permanent fix.
Absolutely.
And that,
Yeah.
to me, that's the key piece. That's where I've seen my experience in maintenance, where we tend to miss the mark a lot of times. We might do that 60% fix to get that asset back up and running. And then we miss the part of the right communication to make sure that notification and work order is created in the system, plan and schedule to go back and get that 100% fix. To my experience, that's the part where you have to really pay attention, because it's easy to fall through the cracks if we don't have good communication.
Yeah, and that seems like if you can pull that off, so valuable, right? To just be able to discern what's the quick fix that we can do immediately, but let's make sure we come back and then let's invest the time now for the longer fix so that it avoids some of those problems in the future. Are you leveraging that CMMS platform to keep track of that?
Sir, that is correct. So one thing that we've recently done is really invested some time in some communication matrix that kind of helps define at what point, then using RACI charts to identify who's responsible, who's accountable, who's impacted, to really help our team start to see what that should look like, right? And I think that's the work in process. We're definitely not where we want to be, but over the last year and a half with this team, we've really seen a lot of good improvements. So I'm excited about the future.
Yeah, that's great. Well, even using something like a RACI chart and helping everybody see how that fits together and when you take responsibility and, et cetera, is huge. All right, just to go a little more, and maybe there's nothing here, but from a controversial perspective, is there anything about your job or field of expertise that you feel like no one agrees with you about, or you've got a slightly different perspective than what you're hearing or what you've heard?
I'll use one dealing with, and I've dealt with maintaining our assets in our plants that actually produce products, but now dealing with this facilities team. Nobody says that the facilities assets aren't as important, but I do think that they tend to get forgotten about a lot of times. And to some degree, depending on what perspective you look at that from, facilities assets could potentially be viewed as more critical than a single production line, right? Because if you lose processed water to a facility, you're not just talking about a single production line potentially coming down, right? You could impact an entire facility at that point in time. So while people don't say it, a lot of times I feel like some of your infrastructure assets are kind of an afterthought. We really get honed in on those production assets. So really trying to, work in this role and bring that level of visibility to those facility infrastructure assets to say, hey, we're fortunate that they don't fail more often than they do, because many times in the past they've been neglected. And it's been, I think it's been pretty good. And here at least, we've got some people who realize that and are on board with, you're right. We need to put the same level of emphasis on maintaining our facility infrastructure assets as we do our production, because there is a huge implication.
And what would be like the one or two that you would say, hey, if there's only a couple you're going to zero in on, here's maybe a couple you're missing that you should really pay attention to.
that we hadn't really done a really good job at in recent history that we picked back up over the last year is really looking at our electrical infrastructure. So when we think about metal clad switch gears, motor control centers, some of that type of stuff, unit substations, you have large scale breakers in unit substations that could shut down whole portions of plants, right? And really making sure that we're doing proper maintenance and testing on those type of breakers and that type of electrical infrastructure. I think it has huge potential implications.
Huh.
And then there's the next piece, your insurance company, depending on, who you use, but I can say that, they come in and do audits. And a lot of times, if you're not maintaining that, that's always on that list. If they want to see that you're actually maintaining that electrical infrastructure, there can be cost implications to a company as well.
That's great. That's really helpful. I'm glad you even pointed that out. I do think that's an area that, when you think of assets, you might not go to electrical infrastructure. And so that is definitely one of those that's I think going to be really helpful for folks to think about. We talked a little bit about technology and tools, and I want to talk just this in two areas. One, just on a very practical level, what tools would you say are indispensable for your role right now? Obviously SAP PM is going to be one of those. What are some of the other tools that you would say these are the tools? It could be as simple as your phone, but what are they that you feel like are indispensable for doing your work?
I definitely say the phone. Communication's key, and it rings and takes a lot. But like you said, you hit on already. CMMS is huge for us. We really have to kind of live and breathe by that. And then outside of that, honestly, I would go back to a knowledge of just some of the standard tools that are out there. I talked about a racing chart. When you're root cause analysis is a huge part of the process trying to improve, right? Because if we don't dig into the root cause and actually fix the root causes of issues, then we're bound to continue to repeat those issues. So an understanding of different, methods that you can use to do RCAs. And I would say, training on that is a big piece to make sure you really understand. Ramped up, I would say, in the last year and a half across our organization, the RCAs, and developed the RCA library, so you can actually go in and pull up previously done RCAs by other maintenance teams. So if you have an issue, maybe somebody's had that same issue, right? You can go back and look at what their documented corrective actions were.
Right. That's
stuff. But that's a huge part of it. It's RCAs and really knowing how to do it. We ramped up. You would be surprised at some of the stuff you see on RCAs, right? I won't throw any examples out there, but there's definitely, I think a lot of folks probably have that need for training on really how to utilize that as a tool to help us get better.
That's great. And is that something that you're, from a technology perspective, is that also something you're housing in SAP PM, all your RCAs?
Our RCAs aren't in SAP PM. They're actually in another platform that we use there. I'll be honest, I don't know if there's a really good way to house all those in there, but if there is, I'm sure we've got a fellow who knows SAP PM. He'll figure it out. We do have a database that we use to house all that information. And it's easy to go in and sort and filter through. And I think that's important. So if you have an issue, you're not necessarily trying to reinvent the wheel, right? If somebody's already found a solution to that problem, it's a quick, easy way to share information.
Absolutely. That's great. Well, good. Well, let me just kind of end again. This is the Reliability 4.0 podcast. So we always want to be thinking about technology and moving the world more digital and just thinking through how to do that wisely. I see that your company, for example, is pretty innovative. You guys have started what looks to be some sort of a fund where you all actually are encouraging other companies to take and I don't know if you're home growing them or partnering with companies, but your company is being very innovative in the area of technology. What have you seen, and it doesn't have to be specifically related to your job, but just even in the company, that you would say is just a really interesting technology that you've seen being implemented or being utilized?
You know, that's a tough question to answer because Southwire is so scattered out, man. We've got so many different people doing different things. But one that I would go to is what we call connected enterprise. It's a part of our modernization efforts. It's headed up by a fellow named Jeff Dewberry. And what they've done is really start to utilize a technology to gather information from our production lines and really be able to look at the recipes of how those lines are running, how they're performing. They can analyze uptime, downtime. This information is feeding from PLCs equipment back into some type of database, and some of that gets far beyond me. I'm not the guy on that part, but I really think it's innovative and creative to harness that data and have those people that they have on that team that know how to manipulate and utilize that data to show us, where are our opportunities for improvement and where are we doing good so that we can try to repeat them. So I think that's huge. And I think it's, internal part to the company, but I think that's extremely innovative.
That's great. That's good to learn more about. Well, listen, we've been here with Chris Phillips. We're really thrilled, and thank you for the opportunity to learn more about Southwire, about your role in the company, and just about the technologies that you're using to be a more effective reliability engineer and a more productive engineer. It's great to hear some of those things you're doing, and I know people will benefit from it. So thank you for joining us today, and we're really grateful for it. So thanks.
Yes, sir. Thank you.